Ohio State, Michigan collision course. Let's compare. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. We have the best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football, not because of me, but because of your participation. Please support the channel, hit the like button, and subscribe. And also give me a call. We go live this week. In addition to all our team live streams on all the team channels, we go live here with call-in shows Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this week. Give me a call. Let's talk college football. All right, Ohio State and Michigan, how do they compare? Once Michigan took on Penn State and then the Buckeyes were going to Happy Valley, a lot of people thought, okay, this is the measuring stick. Let's check it out. Well, actually, we now have 3 valid measuring sticks. Both teams have played Iowa, Michigan State, and Penn State. Let's check out the numbers. Michigan State Saturday night at the Big House. Wolverines won it 29-7, so the scoring differential plus 22 on Michigan's side. Michigan passed for 48 less yards than Michigan State, but they threw it 4 times less, so that's pretty understandable. Michigan State took some shots downfield, but of course, Michigan bludgeoned Michigan State on the ground. 239 more rushing yards on 29 more carries, so consider this. Michigan basically ran the ball 29 more times for 239. That's like 8 yards per carry on the ground. They dominated the game and, of course, outgained and outscored Michigan State. They also had 16 more first downs and were more effective on 3rd and 4th down against Michigan State. The Wolverines 10 of 17 on 3rd and 4th down conversions. Sparty only 3 of 15. The Michigan defense played extremely well. All right, Ohio State, Michigan State played a few weeks ago. Buckeyes won it 49-20. They threw the ball all over the place, 182 more yards passing than Michigan State, and they did that on the same number of pass attempts. So Ohio State much more effective than Michigan State through the air. Also on the ground, Ohio State ran it 26 more times than Michigan State for 230. That's almost 10 yards per carry more on the ground, and of course a whopping 412-yard advantage. Neither team turned the ball over in terms of turnover margin, and much like Michigan, Ohio State had way more first downs and were so much more effective in 3rd and 4th down efficiency, 7 of 13 versus 3 for 11. Similar performances, Michigan and Ohio State against the Spartans. Now let's check out Iowa. Michigan led that game 20-0 before they gave up any points. They won the game 27-14. Garbage points in the 4th quarter, although Iowa had the ball 1st and goal, and they were down just 13 points with about 5 minutes left. Iowa threw the ball more effectively to a certain extent in terms of total yardage, but that's understandable. They threw it 7 more times than Michigan for 91 more yards. That's about 13 yards per pass. But, of course, Michigan dominated on the ground with 137 more yards on just 18 more carries. So, again, substantial gains on the ground for Michigan. They had 8 more first downs. Both teams not effective on 3rd and 4th downs. Michigan slightly better at 5 out of 12 versus 4 of 13 for Iowa. Now the Buckeyes comparison against the Hawkeyes here, where they blew out Iowa in the second half of a defensive struggle in which Iowa's defense held down the Buckeyes in the red zone, and then Ohio State finally broke through starting in the 3rd quarter. They passed the ball all over the place. They only had 8 more passing attempts, get this, than Iowa, but threw it for 213 more yards. Neither team was effective against the other defense on the ground. Ohio State ran it 5 less times than Iowa for 11 less yards, so similarly ineffective, 202 more yards than Iowa. Big turnover game here in which Michigan, Iowa were dead even in turnovers. Ohio State turned over Iowa 6 times, so they were at +4, and they were more effective on 3rd and 4th down, 6 of 16 instead of 2 for 17 for Iowa. Now let's look at the game that most people are pointing to as a quality team. So Michigan State, Iowa have their issues. They've got their struggles that are obvious on both sides of the ball, depending on the team. But Penn State is a barometer that we can look at as a quality team, I believe to be one of the top 15 to 20 teams in college football. Michigan at the Big House bludgeoned Penn State. They dominated the first half, but only led 16-14, and actually trailed early third quarter 17-16 before they raced home for the win. Michigan threw the ball 5 times less than Penn State, of course, as they led in the third and fourth quarters and threw it for 12 less yards, so that's pretty much a dead even stat. But Michigan, of course, dominated on the ground. 307 more yards rushing than Penn State on 33 more carries, so about 9 yards per carry in those additional carries against Penn State. They dominated in total yardage, even though they had a turnover and did not turn over Penn State. Way more first downs, 28-10, effective on third and fourth downs at 67% conversion rate, and held Penn State under 33% at 5 of 16. Buckeyes, Penn State, this was a really good contest for into the fourth quarter with about 9 minutes left is when Ohio State just completely exploded on offense and defense. But up until then, Penn State led this game 16-14. Buckeyes eventually won with a 28-3 scoring barrage, 44-31. So they had less passing yards, less rushing yards. However, Ohio State ran 20 less plays. They are more explosive. They don't need all those plays to score points. They threw 13 less passes for only 17 less yards, so they were much more effective and efficient and explosive throwing the ball downfield than Penn State. They ran the ball 7 less times for 13 less yards, and Ohio State was really bottled up on the ground like they were against Iowa against Penn State until late in the game. So Penn State actually outgained Ohio State by 30 yards on 20 more plays. So Ohio State was more efficient, more explosive on offense, but the total yardage in Penn State's favor because Ohio State scored so quickly, and of course, they also scored on defense. The turnovers were 4-0 in Ohio State's favor, and that pretty much spelled the game. In terms of third and fourth down effectiveness, actually, Penn State was more effective, 9 of 20, 45%, against Ohio State's 5 of 13. All right, let's add it all up. It's Iowa, it's Michigan State, it's Penn State against Ohio State, and against Michigan. This is interesting. Buckeyes outscored those 3 opponents by 88. Michigan outscored them by 59. Ohio State threw for 378 more yards than those 3 opponents. Michigan was actually outpassed by 151 times. But of course, they threw the ball 16 times less than their opponents. Ohio State's rushing advantage, 206 yards. That's about 65 to 70 yards per game. Michigan's total is enormous, of course. They ran the ball 80 more times than Iowa, Penn State, and Michigan State. Of course, they had the lead in those games for 683 more yards. So the total yardage advantage is pretty close. It's within 50 yards. Ohio State at 584, Michigan at 532. Turnovers, the Buckeyes, because of what they did against Penn State with 4 turnovers on defense, and against Iowa with 6 turnovers plus 8, Michigan actually -1. First downs, Michigan, because of the ball control, the ground attack, 42. Ohio State up by 22 against those 3 opponents. Third and fourth down efficiencies, we see Ohio State 18 of 42 on third and fourth down. Michigan so much better, 27 of 47. That's well over 50%. And third and fourth down defense, both teams effective. Michigan a little bit more so at 12 of 44 for their opponents. Ohio State 14 of 48. All right, let's get down to yards per play because this is a pretty good measurement that's used by tons of people out there, and it's proven to be valid. Ohio State ran 196 plays against those 3 teams for 1,426 yards. That's 7.35 yards per play. Michigan, much more ground-oriented, 223 for 1,333. That's just under 6 yards per play. So the Buckeyes gained almost 1.5 yards per play more than Michigan. All right, you would expect the Buckeyes to have a disadvantage on the defensive side of the ball against Michigan. Michigan opponents, 159 plays for over 800 yards, just over 5 yards per play. Ohio State, their 3 opponents, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, 187 plays, so they keep them on the field a little bit longer, for 842. 4.5 yards per play. So actually, Ohio State has a 2.85 yards per play advantage over its opponents compared to Michigan's 0.94. It's substantial. Better performance out of Ohio State than Michigan. What does it all mean? Well, we'll talk about that throughout the week and as we see more opponents against Ohio State and Michigan. I don't think there's any question that the one glaring aspect of all this that comes out is that Ohio State takes more shots downfield. They're more explosive. Michigan could be explosive. We don't know. They don't need to be explosive to this point. So they could be explosive. They've got a tremendous wide receiver room. They've got a quarterback with all the high ceiling skills that are needed to be explosive. Ohio State just flat out is explosive, and they're the best passing offense in college football. The other thing that is obvious beyond the stats, it's reflected in the stats, but you got to go beyond that and watch the games, is that Michigan's ground attack is so much better than Ohio State's right now. Michigan pounded Iowa. They pounded Penn State. They pounded Michigan State. Ohio State pounded Michigan State. Struggled on the ground against Iowa mightily. Struggled against Penn State on the ground until the fourth quarter. Then they got it going in the run game. All right. We still have some more comparisons coming up on the schedule. Ohio State has Indiana coming up in 2 weeks. Michigan won that game 31-10. And then the Buckeyes also play Maryland. Good measuring stick right there. Michigan basically controlled the game, were never seriously threatened. However, Maryland hung around and Michigan had some fortunate plays, including an opening kickoff blunder by Maryland, and Michigan won the game only 34-27. All right, on the Michigan side, they face Rutgers coming up on November 5th this Saturday, and the Buckeyes won that game over the Scarlet Knights at 49-10. Your thoughts about the Ohio State-Michigan comparison? Join us Monday live at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for our Top 25 That Actually Makes Sense reaction show. And then also on Tuesday night, we've got a big watch party. Got to catch us on Tuesday night, 7 Eastern Time, for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's unveiling. And we will pick it apart right here at the Voice of College Football.